You can chit-chat or have small talk with anyone, and you'll do it with power, tact, and finesse. So let's get started with lead-in lines. Lead-in lines make your life so much easier. I find it very difficult to jump off the high dive at the swimming pool, in the public swimming pool in Fargo, North Dakota. Looking back, it was maybe 15 feet high. It wasn't that high, but I remember getting pushed off of that high dive because I did not want to go. Once I got pushed, I kept going over and over and over again because it was fun, but I needed a little push. Lead-in lines give you that little push. When you have the right words to help start conversations, it's so much easier to keep them going. You know, the first words out of your mouth are the most difficult. So make it easy. What I've done is I put some flashcards in your workbook, and in those flashcards you will find one of them that talks about lead-in lines, conversation starters. And the beauty of it, in terms of having communication skills and being able to make small talk, the beauty of it is there are just 3 simple lead-in lines that you need to learn. You'll see in this course there are really only a handful of tools that you will need. Once you can master a handful of tools, just a few phrases, practice them in no-risk situations, because that's what you want to do. You want to take your flashcards and practice opening conversations using the lead-in lines that we'll be talking about in no-risk situations, so that when you are sent, let's say, to a conference and you are there to represent your company or your department or yourself, and it's more of a high-risk situation, there's a lot on the line, so to speak, those aren't the times you try out new skills. That's when you take the skills that we'll be learning today and apply them. Easy breezy. And you will be so confident because you will see after 1 or 2 times of trying these out how effective they are. And it only takes a couple of times to try them, see that they work, for you to feel like, oh, I got this. Because that's what builds confidence. Repetition. So, let's get started with
the opener.
Wow. Remember, people will love you if you are authentic and open and genuine with your introverted self. Or if you're on the spectrum, people will love you and you will win them over if you are upfront, open, and reveal yourself to other people, because that is the most difficult thing to do. Reveal yourself as an extrovert, as an introvert, as on the spectrum, off the spectrum, it does not matter. Communication is not about your personality style or your inclination. It's about having learned specific skills that you can then implement when meeting new people. That's all it is. There is a trick when you meet somebody new to make them think, wow, I'm impressed. I'm impressed with you as not just a communicator, but as a person. It is this. When you meet someone for the first time, your shoulders should be back and your chest should be round robin up. You look them straight in the eye. You tilt your head forward, not to the side. And you extend your hand and you say, hi, I'm with your name. Hi, I'm Dan O'Connor. What's your name? That is it. So practice saying that with your name in the I'm section. Say that 3 times. Hi, I'm so-and-so. What's your name? Repeat that. Hi, I'm so-and-so. What's your name? Hi, I'm so-and-so. What's your name? Easy, right? Did you just get a little butterflies in your stomach when you said that, because it's so stressful to have to meet new people that simply remembering those phrases and giving them a voice makes you nervous? Does it? If so, you're in great company, because simply saying those phrases, hi, I'm Dan O'Connor, what's your name? If I were hooked up to a lie detector machine right now, you would see it go off the charts with stress, because meeting new people is so stressful to me, but I've had to do it so often in my line of work, just time and time and time again. Show up alone at a convention, thousands of people, and I'm the keynote speaker. I'm the one they're all there to see. I have to meet and greet all by myself. I don't know how I get into this line of work, because I'm telling you, if you had told me at 20 years old that that's what I would be doing, I would have had nightmares every night dreading it, thinking, what? I have to go and meet strangers every day? That's not my thing. Now that I know, all I have to do is walk up to people and say, hi, I'm Dan O'Connor, what's your name? Simple. Because when you do that, people will be so open and excited to meet somebody who's such a savvy, eloquent communicator. But remember, there's a big difference between saying, my name is, and I'm. When you say to somebody, because I'm going to break down this greeting now. When you say to somebody, hi, I'm Dan O'Connor, and remember, there are 3 points to that. As I approach you, I have the chest up, shoulders back. I lean into you, look you in the eye, extend my hand and say, "Hi, I'm Dan O'Connor, what's your name?" The whole time, the head is nodding forward. When you do that, remember, it sends a message that's louder than anything you could possibly say. Because when you tilt your head to the side, just as a dog might, that sends a message that we have already learned to interpret instinctively. We are born with the ability to interpret body language in most cases. You don't have to learn how. So if I walk up to somebody and I'm doing that, as I say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so, what's your name?" I'm sending a message of confidence, power, but it's a very simple how do you do. So I'm not being aggressive or putting people off. And when I extend my hand as I do that and I make physical contact, remember that when you touch other people, that is going to release a little bit of serotonin, oxytocin in the other person's brain, simply holding their hand. Then when I couple that with the message that I'm sending with the head nod forward, and they've already seen me walk up confidently with my shoulders back and my chest out, and I use my power tone when I say, "Hi, I'm Dan O'Connor, what's your name?" Remember that your power tone, to summarize, you can find by simply saying, "Mm-hmm." So do that. Go, "Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm." And that vibration that you do when you say, "Mm-hmm," look down at your lap, okay, and say, "Mm-hmm." And now as you say, "Mm-hmm," lift your chin up, "Mm-hmm." Okay, now if the "mm-hmm" went away as you did that, a lot of people will be like, "Mm-hmm," because they can't sustain the "mm." Practice. Because the more you can sustain that "mm-hmm," it builds up the muscles that you need to vibrate, which will project what would be considered to be your power tone. If you do that, you project it with the tone, you project it with your body language, you nod your head, and you project it with your words. Because remember, Mark Zuckerberg is a pretty famous guy. I'm not saying whether he's good or he's bad, I don't have an opinion. He's the first name that came to mind. Well, Steve Jobs was the first name, but I'm gonna let him rest in peace today. Mark Zuckerberg is the second one that came to mind. Most people know who he is. He's the, CEO of Facebook? Or the owner, president? I'm not sure. He's the Facebook guy. Could you imagine him walking up to someone and saying, "Hi, my name's Mark. My name's Mark Zuckerberg"? Of course not, because he's more than a name. And when we believe ourselves to be self-actualized, or when we believe that we have arrived, when we believe that we are players, when we believe that we belong someplace and we have the right to be there by nature of who we are, I'm more than a name. I have done something with my name, and now I have become Dan O'Connor. I'm Dan O'Connor. All of those things are summarized in the phrase, "I'm Dan O'Connor." Well, you'd use your name, but if you take all those things and bundle them together, that one thing, "Hi, I'm Dan O'Connor, what's your name?" will blow people away when you're the one who can do that. So if you have somebody new in your department and people are like, "Oh, who's the new guy?" or "Who's the new girl?" If you are the one who can say, "Just a minute, I'll find out," and you walk over, "Hi, I'm Dan, what's your name?" they will be blown away. I can't tell you how many people have come up to me. Thank you, Dad. My dad specifically instilled this one trait in me. I mean, many traits, but this one, thank you, Dad. He taught me how to walk up to people because I hated it so much. He made me do it over and over again. He taught me how to walk up to people and say, "Hi, I'm Dan O'Connor, what's your name?" I can't tell you how many people from where I have worked have told me years later, "I can't tell you how grateful I am for the first day that I met you. I was new in the company, I was all by myself, and you walked up to me and greeted me and made me feel welcome." That meant a lot. And those people and I still share bonds because of that first moment. Make them count. That's how to do it. Simple, right? So practice that. Remember, "Hi, I'm so-and-so." Extending your hand, head tilt forward, direct eye contact, shoulders back. You can't go wrong, especially when you also use your power tone. Okay? But now let's move into what are called lead-in lines. Lead-in lines are specific phrases that you use to begin conversations, to begin a chat, to begin making small talk, to get the first words out of your mouth. It's so easy to get words out of your mouth when you can get the first words out of your mouth. Get the ball rolling, so to speak. And the good news is, when you're making small talk or having conversations or socializing, there are only 3 lead-in lines that you need, just 3, to become a master communicator and to be able to communicate in any situation with any person about anything. Are you ready? Before I give them to you, Study the different interviewers of the day. If you get a chance to watch people, I don't even know who they are these days. In my day, it used to be Larry King, Oprah Winfrey. Those are the two. I would watch Ellen DeGeneres is, I think, one of the queens of today. When you study people who are highly paid, highly coveted, powerful communicators, communicate with other people, when you study them doing that, what you will find is these are the 3 phrases they use all the time, over and over again. Are you ready? Number 1, how do you feel about? Number 2, what do you think about? And number 3, tell me about. So repeat these out loud after me. Number 1, how do you feel about? Say that out loud. How do you feel about? Say it again. How do you feel about? Say that again. How do you feel about? Now say this. What do you think about? Say it again. What do you think about? Say it again. What do you think about? Now one more time. What do you think about? And now say, tell me about. Say it again. Tell me about. One more time. Tell me about. Okay, now that seems simple, right? But here's the thing. There are so many things that we will do on an unconscious level that other people will pick up on a subconscious level that send messages that we are not comfortable in this situation. And if we are communicating with somebody, what that means is, I am not comfortable with you. And if someone is sending you a message, even if you're interpreting that message on a subconscious level that says, I am not comfortable communicating with you, it is very difficult to then be comfortable communicating with them, especially if they don't know you, especially if you don't know them and they're the ones who initiated the conversation. A recipe for disaster. But it's just like when you learn a new language. When you learn a new language, your accent is very difficult to put aside or overcome, get over. It's very difficult because the language is new. When you're learning new communication skills, it's as if a lot of us still have an accent. And even if English is your native tongue, saying new things in English, doing new things in English, it is as if some of us have an accent as we do it. It sounds awkward as we do it. How do we get over that? You practice it over and over and over again. So what I'd like you to do is practice going through the day. Find 3 different times today, tomorrow, and the next day to say to people, tell me about, and then finish the sentence. Tell me about when you met Dad. How do you feel about living in Mexico? What do you think about the new administration? When you ask people, what do you think about? You are activating the right-hand side of their brain. The left-hand side of their brain. When you ask people, how do you feel about? You're activating the right-hand side of the brain. When you ask people, what do you think about? And how do you feel about questions? You're activating both sides of the brain. You're making sure that whether they are more of a feeler or a thinker, you're speaking to that part of them. And you're using the savviest lines of all time. If you're the one who simply holds his own or her own in a conversation by saying, what do you think about this? How do you feel about that? Tell me more about that. If you simply say that over and over again and walk away from a conversation having said nothing but that, people will think you are fascinating and an exceptional conversationalist, very skilled, because you know how to listen to people, get them to open up, and let them know, I'm interested in learning about you. I care about you. I want to know about you. You will be one of the few people they will ever meet who's able to do that, if you can do it. So practice it. When you meet somebody at a convention, remember there's a big difference between open-ended questions and closed-ended questions. Open-ended questions are designed to open the lines of conversation, and they open people up. Closed-ended questions are designed to close the conversation and shut people down. You'll see people having these awkward conversations because they're asking questions that are designed to close the other person down. So they keep shooting them out, and it turns out to be like a game of 20 questions, and people feel, instead of like you're talking with them and having a conversation, they feel badgered. Jorge. Did I say that out loud? But instead, look at the difference between these 2 questions. Where do you work? When somebody asks you, where do you work? What do you want to say? Oh, what do you do? Where are you from? Now compare those with, so tell me about what you do. So tell me about where you work. So tell me about where you're from. Really? And what do you think about that? How did you feel about that when you first found out? What did you do about that? Wow, that must have really been something. You can talk all day saying just those things. Remember that. But now let's say we've got the conversation started. You know, when you ask the average person, instead of, so what do you do? Or where do you work? Or where are you from? If you were to ask the average person, so tell me about where you're from, or tell me about what you do, you will notice that most people will start with, well, and they'll have to all of a sudden think about what it is that they do, or where it is that they work, where it is that they're from. They know the answer to all of those questions, but they're not used to having people ask them that. They're not used to anybody taking an interest into who they are, where they're from, what they do. And it's a totally different ballgame when you simply know how to say, so tell me about where you're from. Tell me about what you do. Tell me about who you are, is what you're really saying. Okay? So once we have that, simple lead-in lines. You have your greeting, you said hello. Let's talk about using names. Okay? When you use somebody's name when you first meet them, 3 times, it is as if you are a snake charmer and they're the cobra. You're going to charm them. Well, they're a garden snake, let's just say that. Remember that the sound of our own name is one of the sweetest sounds to our brain. When we hear it, it releases a little drop of positive chemicals in our body when someone uses our name. Let's say that I just met somebody, her name is Shelly. You know, hi, I'm Dan, what's your name? Shelly? It's nice to meet you, Shelly. Tell me, Shelly, what do you think about the conference so far? What I just did was use that person's name 3 times. And 3 times is a charm on so many different levels. Number 1, those were, all 3 of them were appropriate times to use their name. Some people you will notice overuse other people's names, trying to somehow, because they just, heard it in a chorus and they're trying to use it to kind of ingratiate themselves with another person. But when it's not appropriate, it seems awkward and then it stands out and people notice something doesn't smell right here and they get suspicious about you. But when you meet somebody and they say, my name's Shelly, and you say, hi Shelly, I'm Dan. Nice to meet you, Shelly. Those 2 times, totally appropriate and normal. Now I'm going to ask you a question. Tell me, Shelly, what do you think about this conference so far? Now I don't have to worry about using the person's name because I've done it enough where I have created a bond. They heard it. I created positive chemicals that they are experiencing when around me. And I have dramatically increased the likelihood that I will remember that person's name because I've used it 3 times. When you use somebody's name with them, when you first meet them 3 times, 3 times is a magic number in so many different ways. But remember to use somebody's name 3 times. Hi, person's name. Hi, so-and-so. I'm Dan. Nice to meet you, so-and-so. Tell me so-and-so. What do you think about? That's all you need to do. Now I've done it 3 times. Easy breezy. So then I'm going to move right along. Now, by the way, there are certain tricks that you can use if you struggle with remembering names. Remember, that's something that's remember that is just like any other skill. You can learn to remember people's names. You can learn to remember 100 people that you just met at a conference. You can learn to remember their names with the right tools. I don't have the time in this, or the tools to give you right now, but I'm going to be adding that soon. Difficult conversation obstacles that we need to overcome, such as remembering names. So remember, if you are a VIP member, that will be coming out and that will be free to you. If you're not a VIP member, become one, and you will see that in our upcoming courses, I think in 2020. I'm forgetting what year it is. And remember, when you are first meeting people, we already talked about body language for the intro. But when you're meeting somebody for the first time, remember, they don't know if you slouch. If you're more of a sloucher by nature, they don't know that about you. You just met them. Remember, ramrod straight. Keep your back straight up, shoulders back, chest up, the whole time that you're speaking to them. Keep your head forward. The only time you want to tilt your head to the side is if you're asking a question like, tell me about that. That's interesting. Or if you're sympathizing, that's too bad. Otherwise, Keep everything as if there's somebody pulling on a cord, pulling you right up to the sky, because that is attractive. Not in the sense like, ooh, you're sexy, but it's an attractive quality. People want to be with and communicate with people who appear to be confident and self-assured. And even if you're not, sometimes we got to fake it till we make it. And it's kind of like, did you know that people who get Botox are less angry than people who don't? Did you know why? Because if you're not able to make the angry face that you sometimes can't make depending on the type of angry face, when you are Botoxed up, your body doesn't think you're so sad, because our outside is affected by our inside. You know, what is going on the inside comes out on the outside. But sometimes we forget that that connection works both ways. You can alter what's going on the outside, and it will alter what's going on the inside. If you just walk around smiling, you'll feel happier by the end of the day. If you just walk around scowling, you'll be angrier by the end of the day. And if you zap all that off with a good fix of Botox, you can be totally emotionless by the time 2020 hits. Imagine that. And 75% of users don't have any more migraines. So you might be able to get it included in your plan. Shh. Having said that, the most important body language is when you're meeting somebody new and you're having conversation with them, shoulders back, chest up, face them. You know what I mean? Face them. That's one of the keys. A lot of people, when they first meet people, don't realize that we communicate from the tip of our head to the top, from the tip of our head to the tip of our toes. And when you're meeting somebody, especially for the first time, if you are at a table and you shift so that you are facing them even more than if you were not to shift. You know, if there's any possible way to give somebody more of your attention and lean in more to them, do that. Because there aren't many people, number one, who care to do that anymore, or who would know how to do that if they cared to do that. Look at Maggie is really getting into this. Hey, Megs. Everybody say hi to Megs. Hey, Meg. Oh, you can't see her right now. I apologize, baby. You're getting blurred out because you were stealing all my spotlight. It's the way it is, those dogs. Ugh, I think they're so great. Conversation or a relationship has gone astray and you want to help steer it back, back on track. Those types of things you do using navigational phrases. We find ourselves without words sometimes because we just don't know what to say to, remedy this conversation. What would you say if a train went off tracks? Well, that's a little bit different. What would you say if you are the co-pilot in a car that started to go off its path, that started to go the wrong way? Those same phrases that you would use to help people navigate literally, you would use to help people navigate figuratively in a conversation. Phrases such as, we need to stop, back up, turn around, we've gone off track, we might be a little bit lost, we might have gone astray. If you can use the types of phrases that you would use when navigating, those are called navigational phrases, and they work magic in conversations. Have you ever been in a conversation or seen people talking to each other and it's getting a little bit off track, and one of them has the wherewithal, the tools to say, excuse me, I believe this conversation may have taken an unfortunate turn, and I think that it's time for us to stop and regroup a little bit so that we can get ourselves back on track. What do you think about that? And you're like, oh my gosh, they are the savviest communicator I've ever seen. They're using navigational phrases. I think it might be time to stop here. We might need to get our direction back. We might need to refocus a little bit. We've taken a wrong turn. We've gone off path. So why don't we stop here, pause, back up, and I'll see you back here in 5 minutes once we've all had an opportunity to regroup. When you can say to somebody, you know what, I believe I might have taken this conversation down an unfortunate path, so let me stop, back up, and redirect. What about those bears? When you can do that, I believe we may have taken an unfortunate turn in this conversation. So what do you say we stop, back up a little bit, and talk about that awesome conference we just came from? What do you think about that, Dan O'Connor, huh? If you can do that, those are called navigational phrases. And I put a list of them in your flashcards. Again, practice using them. Instead of using common phrases by common communicators that say things like, okay, changing the subject, or let's change the subject. Don't do that. Instead, So what do you say we back up a little bit? I think we may have taken an unfortunate turn. What do you say we stop here why don't we make a U-turn and get this conversation back on track? How about those bears? Use those phrases. You will be seen as a more savvy communicator, and it helps people. When we hear phrases that we're used to and we know what to do with them, people are much more likely to do it. We like taking instructions when we are confident what the steps are that we're taking. When I'm driving on the street and my phone says to me, stay left at the fork, I do that. In 600 meters, make a U-turn. I like doing that. In 300 meters, take a right. I like doing that because I've heard those instructions before. I know that I tend to end up where I'd like to go. They're easy. I'm confident. I'll do it. Same goes for life. If we've heard instructions many times that we're used to following, and good things tend to happen, we get to where we want to go at the end, people are more likely to follow those instructions. So don't say things like, can we change the subject? Or, yeah, I'm not comfortable talking about that. Instead, navigate conversations using navigational phrases. And establishing common ground. This is a trick of master communicators. My grandfather was a master at doing this. If you're talking with somebody who's, let's say, a negaholic, and they're, saying, oh, I hated that conference we just came from. The speaker was so boring. I just about fell asleep in my chair. And you don't want to connect with any of that negativity, which you don't want to do. Connect with what you can. Establish common ground. If somebody were saying, oh, these conferences are just so useless, when I come to them, all I do is use them as extra nap time. I do love extra naps, and it seems like every year of my life, I want to take more naps. So I know exactly what you mean. Grab onto one thing that you can and agree with it, like my father. God bless him. We did not see things the same way in different areas in life. But I loved talking with him because he honored me and respected me no matter what we were talking about. And we used to talk about, let's just say Trump. Let's just, I'll go out on a limb and we'll pretend that we were talking about Trump. And he would say things like, Trump is anointed by God. He was put in the presidency to save us all and to save this nation, from the toilet that we were all spiraling down as a nation. And I'd be like, I can't find much there to agree with. I'm not anti anything, but I would not say that any of our political leaders that I can see in office today were anointed by God, and that's why they're there. Maybe they were, and I'm open to being wrong, but I certainly can agree that this country needs a lot of help. And if you can do that, no matter what somebody says, if you can say to them, well, I have to agree that, and you pluck out something either that they said or related to what they said, and find that common ground. If somebody says to you, oh, what can I find something not to agree with? I don't know anything about football, but I know that my dad was watching a Patriots game recently. And so if he were to say to me, those Patriots, they are the best football team of all time. There's no team either before or after that will ever be as good as the Patriots. I wouldn't even know where to go because I don't know who the Patriots are, where they're from, what their colors are, what their team. I don't know. I've never watched a football game in its entirety. How am I supposed to find common ground there? For example, I could say, it really feels good when you can find something that you feel as though you're a part of the first time you're a part of it, right? And he'd say, yeah, because he just started watching the Patriots games with my stepfather, Jim. And from the first time, Jim felt like he had a pal, in the sports fan box that he now sat in with my dad watching the Patriots games. And it's nice when you can find something like that and feel like you belong when you're watching the very first game, isn't it? When you can find that common ground, and say, boy, I can relate to that part. Remember that when you make a statement and you have a tag after it, wasn't it? Don't you think? Wouldn't you agree? Aren't you? That is a very powerful thing to do in a conversation. Yeah, I can relate to that feeling of, even though you just began watching the Patriot games, feeling like you always have watched them because they took you in and made you feel like you were part of their team, right? When you can say that at the end, right? Isn't that what it's like? Wouldn't you agree? Can you relate? Those little tags get people connected with you and increases the likelihood that they will say, Yes, as they're talking with you, and that's a good thing in so many different ways, which we can't get into now. Use tag questions when you're establishing common ground and relating to people. Easy breezy, can't go wrong, super powerful. And remember to practice goat hiding. To practice goat hiding means, these days there are a lot of people who are trying to get us a little bit heated in a conversation, even when we first meet them. There's a lot of anger today in society, in communication, and a lot of people will say things during conversations because they are angry and they want someone to either side with them or fight with them. That's what they want. They want to either find a teammate or fight with the enemy. It's not a good idea during initial conversations to do either one of those things. Even if you would be on their team, don't join an aggressive, angry team the first time you speak with that team. And don't fight with an angry, aggressive person the first time you speak with them. Instead, practice goat hiding. If somebody were to say to me, Mexico, why would you live there? Which they do many times, and say things like, that's why we're building a wall to keep Mexicans out. And you're going there? Why would you do that? I want to, number one, establish common ground. And number two, practice goat hiding. I want to let that person know you can try to get my goat, but you're not going to be able to because I won't even show you where it is. That's goat hiding. I could say to them something like, I agree. Immigration has been such a problem in not just the government, but in our country. It's really been tearing people apart these few years, and I'm with you. I hope we find a solution for that soon. By the way, did you see that last speaker in today's conference? Dan O'Connor, oh my gosh, he was so good. Don't you think? Now, when you can do that, when you can say to somebody, oh, I agree, immigration is a huge problem, they will think that you're on their team, but you didn't say so. And, I wouldn't really be on that team, because I'm not really into those angry teams. But when you can tell somebody, I agree, and then grab one part of what they say and agree with it, and then at the end, use a transitional phrase to transition to another subject. We'll be getting into that. Master communication skills. Easy breezy, and they're simple. I'm still only using a few lines over and over and over again. But when you can do that, when you can tell somebody, I agree, I'm going to pluck out one part of what you're saying and then agree with that, it's a huge problem. By the way, what did you think about, remember, a by the way phrase, fantastic transitional phrase from anything to anything. We'll get into that. Remember that the savvy communicator knows how to read and respond to body language. You'll find a lot of people will study body language and what it means, but they don't study what to do when they recognize a signal that somebody's sending them. So let's talk about body language signals and what to do when you recognize them. You ready? I'm going to give you 3 of the most common body language signals to watch for. These are going to be what they call tells. Tells are body language signals that people send that you can interpret to uncover what they're really feeling. All right? Number 1, the neck scratch. Remember that when somebody scratches his or her neck when they're talking to you, we tend to do this naturally when we are confused about what's going on. We don't exactly know what the person's saying. We're not understanding everything. So when you see somebody do that, remember that means for you, it's time to slow down, maybe repeat what you said in a different way, maybe explain a little bit more about whatever it is that you're trying to convey. And when you take the time to do that, when you recognize that somebody's not really understanding what you're saying, therefore you stop and explain, give a little more information, and help them understand what you're saying, that is going to serve you well. Along with when somebody does this. If you're talking with somebody and they close down, they start to cross their arms, meaning, I'm closing down to you, that is okay. If this is a social gathering and somebody's crossing their arms, that means, I'm done talking to you. This conversation I wish were over. Therefore, the savvy communicator will use an exit line at that point to gracefully find another place to go or someone else to talk to. Because if that person is simply shy and feeling uncomfortable in the conversation, but they want to continue talking to you, they will seek you out. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with recognizing, for whatever reason it may be, they're wanting to stop or shut down this conversation, so I'm going to help them do that. If you can do that, if you recognize the signs that people are done talking, and at that point, make your exit, People will be more likely to want to talk to you in the future because they will know, when I'm done talking to them, they am scray. And the final body language tip that I wanted to give you is, when you notice that somebody is touching you, like if you're in a social setting and you're talking with somebody and you want to make a connection, and all of a sudden you notice that as they're talking to you, they touch you on the arm, they touch you on the back of the arm, they touch your shoulder, they make contact with you. There's no mistaking that one. That means they're trying to make a connection with you. Therefore, that's your cue. Remember, if you want to make a connection with them, it's time for you to touch them back. But the 3 safe zones, remember, especially if you're in a professional setting. If you're in a professional setting, the 3 safe zones where you can still touch people, and not totally get sued and lose, are going to be the back of the arm, the shoulder, and the elbow. Now, you can't caress people up and down there, but you can give somebody a quick tap. It was nice talking with you. You know what I found? And as you do that, you tap them. If you can do that after they touch you first or tap you first, you will help make that connection that they're obviously trying to make by touching you. And what happens when we want to stay engaged in a conversation? Let's say that we're at a round table, or we're in a conversation of more than one person, or somebody disagrees with what we say, or challenges what we say, and we're at a loss for words. It's our turn to speak. We should be speaking, we should be contributing, but we don't know exactly what to say. How can we stay in a conversation when we can't find the words because maybe we're nervous, maybe we're not able to recall what it is that we wanted to say right away? How can we do that? Let me give you 2 tips. Number 1 tip is, I love this tip because it came from Mary Kay Cosmetics. And I love phrases that can transform an entire industry or business. And this one phrase, the feel, felt, found, transformed Mary Kay overnight. If you read her autobiography and business story, she talks a lot about the feel, felt, found, because what happened was she had all of these new sales people, mostly women, going out into the market and for the first time in their life having to respond to people, keeping engaged, not missing a beat, and at the same time overcome the objections that people are saying. That was a tough row to hoe. So what she did was she gave everybody what is now known to be the feel, felt, found. The feel, felt, found takes different psychological concepts and puts them into words that we can easily use in a variety of different circumstances. For example, one of the concepts is when somebody says something challenging to what you say, they disagree with you, they object to what it is that you're saying, or they say something that you now need to respond to and you can't really find the words. Validate what they say first, because if you validate what somebody says, it's going to increase the likelihood that if they are objecting to you, you can overcome that objection. Now, it's not going to guarantee it. It increases the likelihood. Also, if you need to respond but can't find the words, simply validating what somebody says buys you a moment in time. That's the feel. I can appreciate why you would feel that way. I can understand why you might feel that way. You do not need to use the word feel. You could say something along the lines of, I understand why you would think that. I can appreciate why you would say that. Something along those lines. But remember not to use the danger phrase, oh, I know just how you feel. Because when you say, I know just how you feel, remember that the other person is going to either think or say, most likely, no, you don't. And now we've blown it. You get the gong, better luck next time. Part number two, when you're buying some time and responding, maybe overcoming objections, is going to be the felt. The felt is going to be when you're letting somebody know, hey, I've been there. Other people have been there. I know some people who were there yesterday. I was just there this afternoon. You know, when you're letting somebody know you are not alone in the darkness. You're in the dark because you're not agreeing with me or you're somehow challenging me, but you're not alone. I have known others who have been in the dark and I have brought them to the light just like I'm about to bring you to the light, but you don't know that yet because we're still at the felt. That's the felt. I'm letting you know, hey, you're not alone. Other people have shared in your sentiment. And somehow I'm going to wrap that into words that make sense in this situation, but you do not need to use the word felt. The feel, felt, found you could use in a very literal way. You could simply say, as politicians do. If you notice this in the political season, they'll say things such as, well, I can sure appreciate why my opponent would feel that way, and maybe some of the viewers who are watching this at home tonight have felt the same way in the past. However, I have not found that to be a viable solution, and let me tell you why. And the whole time they're saying that, I can appreciate why you feel that way, others have felt the same way in the past, or what I have found is all they're doing is thinking, what are my talking points? What am I supposed to be saying? But they're rattling off some words to keep in the conversation, to keep from losing their place at the table. So remember, if you find yourself in a situation where, it's a quick draw, people are throwing out ideas and responding really quickly, and you need to save your place, you need to make sure that you are engaged or you might lose your place, have strategies such as the feel, felt, found. Others have felt the same way in the past. Maybe some of our viewers watching this at home have felt the same way in the past. Many of the customers that I spoke to also thought that. I remember a time when I felt the same way. Then finally, once you've done those two things, then you can respond. Then I can tell you what it was that I was here to tell you to begin with. Then I can give you what I think would overcome your objection. Now, I may have planned all of this in advance. I might have thought in advance, if I say this, they might say that. Therefore, I'm going to have this ready. That's what a smart communicator does. You think about the objections that people might have in advance to whatever it is that you're saying, and you plan for them. But it's not easy. Remember, these are the things that you want to practice using flashcards for, so that when the opportunities arise, you're ready. You don't want to practice these or use them the first time in a high-risk situation. You know what I mean? I have found that it works for me. And I believe that if you can just give it a chance, it'll work for you too. That's what I would call a duct tape closing line for the feel, felt, found. If I were to say, so where do you go to school? Oh, I go to Penn State. Oh, I go to UND. UND, isn't that the cow college? Well, I can understand why you might think it's the cow college. And many of the people who I've talked to who haven't been there or don't know anybody from UND think that really all we have out there is grass. But I think that if you were to come and visit, and of course, I hope you know that mi casa es su casa and you can visit anytime, you'll find that there are a lot of interesting, relevant, really forward-thinking careers that we're studying. So if you ever think about studying something like horticulture, which is, by the way, one of the top careers of the future according to the Forbes 500 list, you know where to go. I can help you out there. Feel, felt, found. I can appreciate why you would think that. A lot of the people who I've met felt the same way. However, I found that their particular college and curriculum works for me, and think it'll work for you too if you can just give it a chance. Remember, feel, felt, found. I'm at a business meeting and I say, well, I believe that this idea would work for us because XYZ. I don't think that'll work. It'll cost too much money and time. Well, I can understand why you might think that it would cost us a lot of time and money. In fact, I bet a lot of the other people in this room are thinking the same thing. How could we possibly fit that into our budget and find the time for it? But I believe that if you can just give me a chance to explain these numbers, you will find that it'll work for us just like it's worked for other businesses. And if I can show you the specifics of how we can do that, would you then be willing to consider my idea? All I did there was I gave you the feel, felt, found, coupled with the if you can just give me a chance. And then at the end, I slid in a solution-focused question. Remember, the solution-focused question is, well, I can understand why you might object to what I just said, but if I can show you how what I just said actually makes sense, would you be willing to give it a chance? If I can show you how that'll work for us, just like it's worked for others, would you then be willing to give me a chance and go ahead with my proposal? If I can show you how it would actually save us money and save us time, would you then be willing to give my idea a chance? If I could show you how one date with me would change your life for the better, would you then be willing to answer my call when I call you tonight at 11 o'clock? If you can say things like that, it takes a very unreasonable person to say, no, I won't, So remember the clarifying question, if I can show you this, would you be willing to give me that? And the last thing I wanted to throw out, if you don't have words but you want to keep in this conversation, is piggybacking. Remember, piggybacking can save you and help you keep engaged in a conversation, help you be relevant, show that you are a player, you're paying attention, you're involved, even if you can't think of anything to contribute to a conversation. Whether you're in a social setting or a business setting, you can always piggyback off what other people say. There's a key to piggybacking. If somebody has a good idea, well, Joan, I believe that we could save a lot of money around here if we just switched to fingerprints rather than time cards. And the conversation is coming to a close and I think, oh boy, I haven't contributed anything and I don't want people to think I'm irrelevant or invisible, so I want to contribute, but I don't know what to say. Piggyback. Piggybacking, when you do it the right way, sounds like this. Wait, first I want to remind you, whoever tends to speak last on any subject tends to own that subject in the minds of those listening. But the one who came up with the idea in the first place is going to get annoyed if you simply steal their ideas. So if you're going to piggyback, here's how you can do it without aggravating somebody and making them think that you're stealing their ideas. And do it with savoir-faire. You ready? Use the person's name who originally said it. For example, yeah, before we go, I wanted to say, John, I really liked your idea about switching to fingerprints rather than time cards. Now I've just used his name and he's happy as a loon because he thinks, oh, he's buttressing what I just said and he's supporting me, so why wouldn't I be happy? But I'm the last one who's going to talk on it, so people are going to connect it more with me. But what I want to do when I'm piggybacking is instead of saying something generic, like, that's a great idea. Yeah, I think we should do that. Or even, let's say that I were going to say, I'm concerned that that might not be the best route for us to take. Whatever you're saying, whether something's good or bad, the key to piggybacking is being specific. So instead of saying, I think that's a great idea, switching to fingerprinting rather than time cards, why? Why is something good or why is something bad? State it at that point. Use adjective phrases or adjectives that clarify why you believe that it's a good idea, such as, I think that is an extremely cost-effective solution for this business, knowing how many employees we have and how much we spend on time cards and then checking up and verifying them when one fingerprint machine could do all of that work for us. Time-saving, cost-effective, fantastic idea. Now people are going to think, wow, that Dan really, really pays attention, and the guy will think, he supported me 100%, I love him, and I'm the one who now owns the idea. And that's the same with, if I'm going to be saying, I don't think that that's a good idea for us, I don't think that's a good solution for our company. If I'm disagreeing with somebody, a phrase such as, it's difficult for me to see, is much better than I disagree, because I disagree causes a negative chemical reaction in our body when somebody hears us say it to them or about their idea. Instead, if we talk about something like this, it's difficult for me to see how that would be a cost-effective solution for this company, seeing how we only have 2 people and both of us are right here in the meeting and neither one of us signed in to begin with. That makes it difficult for me to see how investing in a machine like that is going to pay off in the end. Just saying. I wouldn't add the I'm just saying part. But remember that when you're saying something is not a good idea or it is a good idea, I'm not sure I'm 100% on board. I can't see the cost savings. I find it difficult to see how that is a customer-focused solution for us. I'm seeing a lot of customer dissatisfaction if we go that route. Or, let's say that somebody is going back to the cow college, UND. I'm from North Dakota. My whole family went to UND, but me. Let's say that somebody were to say, you go to UND, don't they just study things like manure there? I could say something such as, well, I can understand why you might see that. However, I believe that if you took a good look at North Dakota, you would see how it is, in terms of agriculture, an academically superior school to almost any other in the region. And that's important when you consider that horticulture and agriculture are going to be in the top 5 careers in the year 2030, according to the Forbes 500 list. So if you're looking for cutting-edge training for tomorrow's jobs, UND is actually the way to go, wouldn't you think? So remember, simple strategies like that, like the piggybacking, the feel, felt, found, and knowing how to read people in conversations and what to do after that, that can help you keep engaged and relevant in any conversation with anybody. It's all about knowing how to read signs and knowing what to say at the right moment. And now that you have the right words at the right time, let's move right along. Remember, one of the most important rules of conversation for someone who is a savvy, polished communicator is keeping it positive in every way. Instead of saying, hey, don't forget this, say, remember this. Instead of saying, don't sit there, sit there. Instead of saying, don't think that, think this. That's one way of being positive. But above all else, you will note that there are a lot of negaholics out there. Do not jump on their negativity train. If you meet somebody for the first time and they start to say negative things, do not start with the negativity. If they say, oh, I just hate this and that, don't you? You don't have to say yes. You could always say, well, I think that last speaker was awesome. I mean, did you see him, Dan O'Connor? Oh, he was just fantastic, don't you think? Don't get on somebody's negativity train ever. If you do, you will be doomed because it tends to become a pattern. The more patterns we start to create in our conversations, the more we fall into those patterns over and over and over and over and over again, and the more difficult they are to break. Do not get into a negative pattern of conversation. And if you are, get out of it as fast as you can and break them using these rules. Start recognizing where you can use skills in conversation. And one of the biggest skills that we can develop is ditching the negativity. Number 2, avoid the taboo. Things like if somebody starts to bring up religion, politics, abortion, the latest change in the office, structure, whatever it may be, something that's a hot topic made to kind of get people riled up. Remember, you could use a simple transitional phrase like, well, I don't know anything about that, but I do know about that last speaker, Dan O'Connor. Did you see him? He was great, don't you think? You can always transition away from taboo subjects. If you believe something is taboo, then that means you don't talk about it. If you're not sure, assume that it is and transition away from it using a simple phrase like, I don't know about that, but I do know about Dan O'Connor training. It's the best, don't you think? And remember, bringing others in. One thing that you can do that some people don't do enough of is talk about other people in a positive way. There is almost nothing that will ingratiate you with other people, meaning that will get other people to like you more than you talking about other people in a positive way. Even if they don't. If you're somebody who, when someone talks to you, you say, oh, you work with Jean? I really admire her. I like the way that she talks to people and treats everybody with fairness. I've seen her do it when no one's looking, no one else but the other person. And she's always fair and honest with everybody. And I can't tell you how much I admire that. So you're pretty lucky to work with her, don't you think? Or you work with John? I love the way he dresses. I wish I had the ability to coordinate clothes and the confidence to pull them off the way he does. Makes me jealous. I like him. When you can simply talk in a positive way about other people, especially if they don't, the more you talk about other people in a positive way, the more people will like you because they will think, you're really cool with other people, even when they're not around. I bet you'll be cool with me like that too. And when other people are talking gossip, or negativity about other people, if you just keep it zipped and are known as the person who does not engage in that or who really tries not to, people will appreciate that and they will like you and they will want to talk to you more. And now we're going to talk about making your exit. Making your exit is so stressful for so many people, and I always tell them, as long as you have these tools, it will not be. Transitional phrases, exit lines, and the surprise PEC. Transitional phrases are going to be phrases that connect anything that somebody's saying with anything else. When I need to transition away from this conversation to my exit, or away from this conversation to another conversation, there are 2 transitional phrases that you can use for anything. Number 1, that reminds me. Say that out loud. That reminds me. Number 2, by the way. Say that out loud. By the way. Those 2 phrases will connect any 2 thoughts that might seem unconnected with one another. Simple. Like let's say that I'm at a butcher's convention and I want to end the conversation and call my mother. So what kind of meats do you serve at your butcher shop? Oh, you're a pork-based butcher. Are you a hogger? Oh, wait, that reminds me. I need to call my mother. It was nice meeting you. Enjoy the rest of the convention. If I need to connect 2 ideas, you do not need, Mom, I apologize. There does not need to be a logical connection because no one will ever ask you, how did me talking about that remind you of that? But if they do, all you need to say is, well, the mind is a mysterious thing. By the way, I need to call my mother. Simple. By the way, that reminds me. Easy. Did you enjoy that last talk? I did too. I thought it was great. Oh, that reminds me. I have to get running, so enjoy the rest of the convention, and I hope to see you around sometime. Goodbye. Simple. Remember, by the way, that reminds me. That's how you stop somebody from talking and transition away to anything else. Let's say that you wanted to simply change the subject. You think that Trump is anointed by God, huh? By the way, what do you think about Brexit? I mean, that's really a complicated issue, don't you think? Let's talk about that and get off of this subject, Anything that somebody says, really? That reminds me. Really? By the way, transition. Exit lines. Exit lines are simple. Remember, you do not owe anybody an explanation ever. You do not need to explain to people. I have something else to do. I have somewhere else to go. I have someone else to talk to. I have work to do. I have to be somewhere. I have a schedule. You do not need to say that. And those who have other things to do, or people to talk to, places to go, people to see, do not explain it. Those who are making it up a lot tend to say it, So when you're at a, convention, you're meeting somebody new, you're at a social event, and it's time to walk away. Exit lines are going to be things such as, enjoy the rest of the evening. It was nice meeting you. I hope to talk to you again. That's it. Period. So get used to, on the flashcards again, I made you a list of exit lines. When you deliver an exit line, that is saying, therefore I'm going because I have something to do. You don't need to verbalize that. Really? You've been a hogger for 15 years? That reminds me, John, enjoy the rest of the conference, and I hope to see you soon. It was great talking to you. By the way, I hope your nephew enjoys the shoes. We'll get to that in a minute. Or you're at a social event. Really? That is fascinating. And you know what? I hope that I can talk to you again before the night is out. It was a real pleasure. Again, my name's Dan. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Walking away, okay? Do not say goodbye. The most effective communicators leave us hanging a little bit. To do that in a conversation, when it's time to go, when you feel like I'm on a high note, because we want to leave when things are going well, not after 5 minutes of awkward silence or, chit chat where you really don't want to make it. When things are going well and you think, boy, this was a great conversation up till now, end it, It was really nice talking with you. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. You got my number. Simple. Gosh, it's a pleasure talking to you. I'm so glad that we met. I hope to talk to you again before the night is out. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Goodbye. You don't need to say goodbye. That's what exit lines do. Practice saying them. When you're done saying them, you walk away. That's how simple it is. Now remember, the surprise PEC is when you're about to leave. This is going to get them. You take one thing that the person revealed to you, and you feed it back to them. Like let's say that they told you, oh yeah, I came here 5 years ago with my mom. Really? Do you still live with your mother? Yes, her name's Mildred. Yeah, she takes care of me and I love her. It doesn't matter that I'm 45 now, I'm still living with Mildred. On your way out, when you can take something that they told you that you have put in your back pocket as a secret weapon, and you say something like, it was a pleasure talking with you and I hope to get the chance again before the night's out, so enjoy the rest of your night. Oh, by the way, give my best to Mildred. She sounds like a gem. They'll be like, oh my goodness. If you went to a conference and people said, it's kind of difficult being a butcher because, I'm a vegan and all, after you say, wow, that is fascinating. It was great talking with you, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the conference and the rest of the speakers. Oh, by the way, next month, there's a vegan conference coming up, and I hope to see you there too. Have a great day. People will pass out at your skills. And all of those together, those are very simple things. All you have learned so far are some lead-in lines to help you start conversations, simple phrases to help keep them going, some rules, and how to make your exit. We talked about things like lead-in lines, transitional phrases, exit phrases, navigational phrases. And with just those few skills, if you practice them, just like that, you will be able to walk into any room, talk to anyone about anything. And using those skills, people will think that you are a savvy, polished communicator. You will blow people away with your skills because you practiced. So remember, practice makes power. Practice these, and you will feel the power and the confidence to have a conversation in any situation with anyone. So thank you for making me a part of this journey with you. Let me know how it goes. Send me your letters. If you haven't yet gotten a VIP pass, make sure to get it because then you can enjoy all of these courses for the rest of eternity. So for everyone here at Dan O'Connor Training, including Maggie, who appears to be very comfortable, this is Dan O'Connor signing off.
What do I say?
DanO'ConnorTraining.com.
What do I say? What do I say? You know what to say. You know what to say. You know what to say.